Okay, meeting is recording and we're ready to go.
Okay, we will call the February 28th, 2024 meeting of the 109 board or the Waste Management District Board to order. And I've got 5:34. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for board members for attending. We need to make one announcement. We went over this before, I think, or discussed it in a meeting, but board members should be aware that because of the open meeting laws, you need to keep your camera on at all times. It's okay if you mute the sound, but in order to be compliant with open meeting requirements, everybody has to keep their camera on at all times, particularly if we're taking a vote or something like that. Okay. First item of business is the approval of the minutes of the January 24th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review the meeting minutes, and are there any questions, comments, changes? Okay, hearing none, can we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Motion. Make a motion. I'll second, I guess. I think Andy got the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion on the January 24th minutes? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved.
Be right there. It's not going to show your picture.
It won't. Oh, it should. Can it?
It should.
Yeah, you're on there.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
I
There you
can't.
are.
Yeah, it's so small.
Although your name has changed, but you're on there.
There's my name.
Only to protect the innocent.
Pete, first item, budget report.
We are running really well in revenues. We, as we would at this time of year, a lot of our license fees have come in from the second half, the second quarter. So we are running at $1,090,000 in revenues, and for expenses, we're running probably about on target. If you take away some of the rollover amount, I believe that we're about 50%. So right now we have $876,000 in expenses for the year. I did send with the packet the individual expenses and the individual categories. If anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Are there any questions or comments on the budget? Okay, thank you. Next item is, well, there's no correspondence to the board, so we move on to action items. Number one, Pete, the ReTrack subscription.
Okay, so this is an annual subscription that we have called ReTrack through Emerge Technologies. And many of the, several of the board members have not heard the pitch before as to why we have this. And so I did kind of want to go over it a little bit so that they're aware.
Sure.
So ReTrack is our primary way in which we gather data from licensees and from other generators of waste or recyclers and the like. So we have to get this data so that we can report to the state, the county's annual solid waste management report. We do a 5-year solid waste management plan, but we have to do an annual that kind of updates things. So in that report, we have to track all the activities across, from education to enforcement to special events to disposal to recycling tonnages of all sorts. So we track every pound of waste, whether it's hauled by Metro by a private entity, anybody that accepts waste in the county. And we try to track anything that goes outside of the county. So we need to know how much is disposed, how much is recycled, and where it goes. And this gives us what we call our diversion or our countywide recycling rate. So this program is what helps us to do that. And let me see. I think. Give a little bit of a look. This is the inside look of it. You know, we've got 186 people or businesses that are registered. Some of them are double registered because they lost their password or the sort. But some of the things, and I'm not going to get into any data that they've reported because I don't want to give that to anybody else. But, you know, at the end of it, I pull out the households and businesses served, disposed tons, where it went by facility and the like. Same thing for recycling facilities, summary by different commodities. You know, one thing about the commodities is it's almost like a shell game. So we have this material going and being bought and sold even inside of the county from this recycler to that recycler. So we have to be careful about double counting. So if ABC on the southwest part of the county, you know, they buy 100,000 tons of ferrous metal, but they sell 50,000 of it to another D, E, and F facility in the northwest, that has to be canceled out. So that's what this program helps me. I used to do this all through a spreadsheet that was just monstrous and subject to a typo, and then you work forever to get it. So this program has actually been a massive benefit to us. So that is basically why we use this and why we need it. And I did put a link in here that anybody could go to that if they wanted to. So the cost of this is $10,479 per year. Well worth it from my standpoint. We pay for it. The Waste District pays for it. All licensees use it for free. So they don't have to worry about that. All they do is have to sign up and do the reporting. It helps us track them. It helps them to see what they have done in previous years and the sort. So there are other additional things that we could add on to this, but at this particular time, we don't have anything else that we need. We are talking about making some adjustments and some names and such. But we're not there at that yet. And any kind of additional charges, we would come to the board first. So at this point, what I'm asking for is for us to be able to continue this subscription for this upcoming year. So I'm asking for approval to spend $10,479 for this subscription.
Pete, just out of curiosity, do you know what it cost last year? I mean, I'm sure it was similar, but
I think that the original price of this, and we've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years, was $9,100. So in general, over the years, it's just barely crept up.
sure.
It's not been nearly as, gone up nearly as much as most businesses have. So
Sure. No, and I think it's as one of the people who handles the reporting for one of the hauling companies, I use the software. I think it's good software. That was never a question. Just honestly, just curious.
yeah, and keep in mind that that Retrack was actually created through a partnership of the US EPA and the Recycling Partnership as a way to standardize tracking across the country because standardized terms and stuff doesn't exist. Standardized tracking doesn't exist. But this is working the way towards getting people to call things the same thing across the country, which makes it much easier to track waste across the country as well.
If I
Great,
can chime
great.
in, sorry, I just pulled the invoices for the last 4 years. We've paid $9,980. So it's only gone up $500 and something.
Yeah, so I think it's a great program. Definitely worth it to me.
Yeah, it's essentially a CPI adjustment on the rate.
I'll make a motion to approve the retrack invoice.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll
This is
second.
Deidre, I second.
2 seconds.
Was that Deetra?
Deidre, yes.
Okay, welcome to the meeting. I didn't know you were there.
Yeah, I had technical difficulties.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion?
I do have just one question about how complete is the service cost per household? Is that based on subscription costs for households? And is that something that we could maybe improve long term?
We have discussed this, and what you'll see in the annual report is a result of what comes out of here, obviously. What is reported is the average cost across all the different types of customers. And obviously you're asking a question because subscription prices are, one thing, contracted prices are another. And so it's basically an average is what we get. Individual licensees, when they input their tonnages and data of households and cost, they do that under penalty of perjury, and obviously so it's direct reports is what we can use from the different individual haulers, and you'll see that when we get to the annual report. Won't be this meeting, but it'll be at next meeting is what it is.
Thanks, Pete.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah.
Okay, Pete, would you call a roll?
Yes, Bob Schindler,
Yes.
Alex Davidson,
Yes.
Andy Reynolds,
Yes.
Deetra Shipley,
Yes.
Deborah Thompson, you want to give a thumbs up? Okay. Sean Killeen.
Yes.
Okay. I think that's got everybody. So it was unanimous. What was unanimous?
Okay, it's approved or no negative votes. Had to catch up here. Okay, thank you all very much. Pete, the annual report extension request letter, if needed. Do we need one?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
As we just looked at the reporting mechanism, we still have about 15 individual licensees that are actually in notice of violation right now because they have not reported on time. We are trying to push to get people to get that taken care of. I can't do a state report unless I have everybody reporting. This is not an uncommon thing for us, unfortunately. Most counties in the state maybe have, a tenth of the reportees that Louisville Metro does. So we've never not been granted an extension, but I wanted to make sure that you guys was aware that and get your blessing that we should go ahead and make send a letter to the state asking for an exemption.
Any questions? I guess you need an affirmative vote on this.
If I could, I feel better if I have that.
Can we have a motion?
I'll move. As someone who fat fingered a number, and Pete had to come back and tell me that I increased diversion for yard waste by a factor of 10. I feel obligated.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I think Alex got it first. We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion by the board? Okay, Pete, would you call the roll?
Bob Schindler,
Yes.
Alex Davidson,
Yes.
Andy Reynolds, Deetra Shipley,
Yes.
Deborah Thompson, sorry,
Yes.
Sean Kelly.
Yes.
That was unanimous approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 3, the RFP.
Okay, so we have last year approved our 5-year solid waste management plan. And in chapter 2, I believe, on the collection system, after working on what the collection system looks like now, looking at its strengths and weaknesses, we come up with action plans. In that chapter, and I did connect the actual plan to this slide. I don't know if anybody had a chance to go ahead and review that for those that wasn't here during that process. Anyway, the first action item that we have as we do this is what our requirement is that we need to look to make improvements. And as part of that, that went through the public comment period and a public hearing is we came and decided that we needed to do a cost of services study across Louisville Metro. And really it's the goal here is to come up with a set of facts on what the cost of services are, what services are delivered throughout the entire county. And also to determine it to the extent possible, any potential community benefits or detriments of creating a single hauler contracted collection zones for single family. So you have to understand that the collection system in Louisville, if you read through the chapter, is a municipal collection system where you have services that are delivered using municipal workers. You have contracted areas such as home rule cities and HOAs that have a single hauler that services all the households within the boundaries of the contract. And then you have subscription, where you have a series of haulers that compete on a house by house basis. So you could end up having multiple haulers on the same street. So what we're trying to do is look and see what the extent would be of creating contracted zones all over Jefferson County would be. So it's a set of facts. So we want to get a statistically significant data. We don't want cut and paste. We don't want subjective data. We want to get as much hard data as we can to show what the costs really are and what the service levels are in as small of an area as we can. Prices for solid waste are governed by multiple factors. One of those is going to be the distance between each pickup, or the housing density in that area. Which is probably one of the biggest factors, how far they are away from a disposal facility, the travel time, and just multiple factors that come into play with it. So we need to find something that is some hard data to help us see what is happening. And we're also going to be asking for a written recommendation for improving service levels and cost per household across the residential system. And we want them to come back and present the recommendations to the Waste Management District Board. So the idea here is that we would put out an RFP, and this RFP would be the way that we're going to go about gathering our information. So the board asked the advisory committee, and the advisory committee, for those that aren't unaware, is it's a group of industry people, it's a group of citizens, it's a group of environmental representatives from environmental communities, and several members from government, to include the Jefferson County League of Cities, metro government. And so they all come together and they work, and we have hashed it out and come up with the language for this RFP. One of the concerns for the RFP was that we have a pre-bid meeting, and I have confirmed that we can have a pre-bid meeting. And, to where any bidder that comes in, we're going to give them the opportunity to ask us questions, and we can ensure that they understand our system as it is, with trying to stay away from any kind of subjectivity as we can. So, and to ensure that they are fully aware that we are looking for hard data that is defendable and understandable. So what we're asking, this has went through subcommittee. It has been approved by the full advisory committee, and it's coming back to the board for the board's approval for us to put it out as RFP.
Just a point of clarification, and the study is looking at determining if a multi-hauler subscription contracted system using several areas of the county is referring only to the unincorporated areas, correct? It's not aimed at small cities or the urban service district boundary, correct?
No, and that's always been some concern. I think what we're trying to do is ensure that, and if you read the plan and the discussion in it, is to see if those areas that are subscription, that have the overlapping haulers, can benefit from doing what home rule cities have already done. So there really isn't a desire on anybody's part to change anything that home rule cities or HOAs for that matter, what they're doing. In fact, I think that if you look through some of the older stuff, you would see that home rule cities are an example of what we do want to do. So there's somebody to look to as an example of what could possibly be done. So no, the desire is not to do anything other than the subscription area. But you also have to understand the entire area so that you can make better decisions.
Are there any I'm sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, are there any questions, Pete?
Yeah. So I do have a couple questions. I guess first, if if we go through this process, we get a recommendation that says, having contracted areas or zones or however that would work out would be more advantageous from a service levels and cost perspective, then what would the next move be? Like, I guess my thought or my concern is that people in certain areas, you would of course want them to have some level of say or choice in the matter. So that's kind of the heart of that question, Pete.
Yeah. So what happens next? And what I would tell you is that this RFP doesn't bind us to anything, and it doesn't prevent any government agency or business from doing anything. If the 109 board decided that it wanted to move forward, what it would have to do is decide to put something together. It would have to go out to public comment. It would have to have a public hearing, and before a decision was made. There is a stringent public input component to anything that we change, and it would involve a change to the 5-year solid waste management plan if it occurs before the next 5-year cycle is up. On the other hand, if Metro Council had decided that it wanted to pursue something, there's nothing that would prevent Metro Council from doing that. In fact, I don't know, but I would suppose that it would be preferable if it went through the Metro Council process.
Well, let me jump in here, Pete, is I think it's important that we note this, that waste management districts are 109 boards, which is the colloquial term that's been used for years because it's comes under KRS 109. Waste management districts have a broad authority granted to them by the state of Kentucky. When this district was established back in the 90s, fiscal court and then Metro Council, when merger occurred, designated specific authority to the waste management district. One of the authorities that we do not currently have is the ability to tax. And if something like this was determined by the board to be advantageous and should be pursued, Metro Council would have to step in and change the authority that the board has and give the authority of the board, give the board the authority to do taxing, much like MSD does right now for wastewater treatment. MSD is established under a state law, and local government gave the Metropolitan Sewer District the authority to collect a sewer fee in order to be able to provide sewer services. And this is the same way. Metro Council would definitely have to be involved in this because at the current time, we don't have any means to raise the amount of funding that would be necessary for the district to go out for contract to collect the entire unincorporated part of the county. Our revenue stream right now comes from license fees on landfills and transfer stations and waste haulers, and it will generate nowhere near what this would require for a funding source. So I just want to make that clear. Metro Council would have to be involved in this. We can't do this on our own because we quite simply can't afford to do it on our own. Didn't mean to interrupt, Pete.
No, thank you for clarifying. Bob has a very long history. I believe that he was here when the waste district was set up.
Are there any other questions of Pete?
So then that would be another, that tax would be a cost that would be passed to the end user, to the resident, or would it be passed across all of Metro? How would that, I mean, we're kind of talking hypotheticals here, but.
Well, it would, the service that would be provided through a contract system like that would only be provided to residences in the unincorporated area. So any fee that was associated would only go to the people getting the service, not to the rest of the county.
What does the timeline look like for collecting the RFPs, assuming it's posted soon?
With a RFP like this, we would want to give bidders plenty of time to be able to consider and learn our community. So typically a RFP would be out 30 days. We would have a pre-bid meeting early on in that process to give people time to understand. From that point on in that process, after the bidding closes, there is a committee that would score the individual bids through a system called Bonfire. It would add up the scores and come out to see who the bidders are. One of the things that you can't see on this screen is the full specifications, which I did send in a packet. And it broke down the individual. Let me see if I can go ahead and pull that over here. There we go. Oops.
One thing I might note while we're waiting for some of the new members on the board. The advisory committee, as Pete said, is made up of a varied number of individuals. And the advisory committee's always been used to actually do a lot of the technical hard work that ends up coming to the Waste Management District Board, rather than expecting board members to sit down and crunch a lot of numbers and do a lot of investigation and stuff. And it probably, again, we need to give a hands up to the advisory committee members, because they put in a lot of work hashing over a lot of this stuff, doing research and a lot of discussion before it ever ends up with the Waste Management District Board. Go ahead, Pete.
So yeah, I have the full specifications here. It's not the full bid. When this is plugged into a boilerplate, that's probably another 60, 70 pages of the things that you have to do to bid. And I'm sure that most of it is procurement law. Anyway, the scoring proposal is 5% statement of qualifications, 35% proposed methodologies and supporting information, 25 example of previous work related to cost of service studies, and 35% to the cost to conduct the study. There was a pretty decent amount of discussion. I mean, we weighted these in a manner that we feel like we can to a certain extent believe that the methodology is going to be used, is going to be sound, and is going to get us the best result. Which, you know, the cost is important. It truly is, but we have to get what we want out of this, or we're just throwing money away. So that's how we weighted it. They have to submit their qualifications. They have to give us a summary of their understanding of our system, these examples, and then the cost to do the study. So I can answer any other questions that we have at this point. What I would say, that even if we come back after this and we have the data, it's probably not going to, there's not a rush to move on this. This would be a major change, and it's incumbent upon us to make sure that people are aware of this and people have their input. So regardless of what process takes place after this, you know, I don't think that there's any rush to do it wrong. And there is definitely you know, the desire to make sure that people are aware and have their say in this. So that's what I would tell you.
And just a note on process, Pete, what you're requesting today is approval to go ahead and put the RFP out.
Yes, sir.
And then if once the staff and advisory committee come up with a recommendation of a firm to do the work, then you'd have to bring it back to us to approve an actual contract to do the work, correct?
Yes, sir.
Any other comments or questions? Since this is an action item, doesn't actually involve the expenditure of any money, but it's an action item, we'll need a motion and a second to authorize the staff to go ahead and start the process. Well, I'll make a motion that the staff is authorized to begin the process of administering an RFP. Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion by the board? Okay, Pete, why don't you, even though this doesn't involve any money, why don't you call a roll on this?
Sure. Bob Schindler,
Yeah, yes.
Alex Davidson,
Yes.
Andy Reynolds,
Yes.
Keith Shipley,
Yes.
Deborah Thompson,
Yes.
Sean Killing.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thanks very much. We move on to new business.
Okay. Okay, the new business is vehicle wreckage debris along roadways in a letter to the Record Services. We're doing this, really, one of the biggest reasons is we're seeing, you guys are probably seeing many more bumpers and debris that's on the side of the roadway from automobile accidents. Whenever this happens, the process that is supposed to take place is that material is picked up by the record company and put into the car from which it came, and it's towed away. It's not always happening for various different reasons. But this letter is an attempt to make them all aware of their duties under ordinance to remove it. So you can, I put the ordinance there. It shall be unlawful to remove any wrecked vehicle without removing broken glass or debris from the roadway. It's really pretty simple. Now, I will say that, you know, I've talked with several of them. They feel like that they're rushed and don't always have time to grab it. What the result of that is, the stuff sits there. People see it, people complain about it. A complaint is put in, and a crew has to stop cleaning litter along the roadway and go to respond to a site and pick the stuff up and clean it up, which, you know, it takes away from us doing, you know, length of road work to traveling to pick up something, which is not the most efficient use of our time. So this is an attempt to ensure that they're aware of it and that they're going to take care of their business and take that time to get it right to begin with. So we just wanted to make you guys aware of it. It is becoming an increasing problem trying to get this stuff removed. Do you have any questions on that?
Pete, I realize that the police have enough to do as it is, but would there be any possible benefit of a little talk between the two departments and just ask the police that if they just remind the wrecker when it shows up is, hey, you need to pick all this stuff up?
Yeah, I think, you know, down at the bottom left hand, you'll see that we have remind law enforcement of the requirements so that they can, and you know, they can kind of police it. They're not always there. Sometimes the police have to clear the scene and the record, the vehicle may be sitting off the side of the road along with the debris, and so they're not there. So in theory, that helps, and it should. We will do that, but it's not always a guarantee that it's going to take place.
And Pete, I have a meeting tomorrow that includes LMPD. I mean, if they're, I think it would be great to CC them on this so that, you know, they can see that we're adding that support when they go out and they're like, hey, pick up that bumper too, please. So if you don't have a,
Director,
I mean, I know you.
Director, Lieutenant Colonel Bates is aware.
Okay.
And is committed to communicating with officers.
Okay.
Good. Thanks.
Any other questions regarding this? No? Host community agreement. The host community agreement, something that's been expired for quite some time. We have been trying to get back to the point where we can begin to negotiate that. For those that are not familiar with community host agreements, they're agreements between the counties and a landfill or disposal location located within that county. And there's some people call it host community benefits that, you know, sometimes that you have a landfill in your community, a certain amount of things come because of that. That can be a detriment to the community. It can also be a big benefit to the community. But this agreement looks to solidify a few things between us. And it's not a law that we have to have a host community agreement. It's advisable and I think can be beneficial to both if we do have that. And really what we want to do with the group, because I think the last full host community agreement was negotiated over 20 years ago. And there's not a lot of people that know a whole lot about those. So our first, we've established the team. We want to meet, which we're taking up one of the slots from a subcommittee that's no longer going to be meeting. So we're not necessarily taking up any additional time. Our goal is to learn about host agreements, review previous agreements, and then reach out and begin that negotiation on the topics. So this would be, right now, it would be between the Waste Management District and Waste Management, the Outer Loop Recycling and Disposal Facility. I know Andy is employed by that entity, so it's kind of a little bit of a situation that would require a little bit of care right there.
So I'm not on that
these
committee,
things-
Pete. Is that is that negotiating against myself?
There you go.
Yeah.
But the one thing about this is, I believe that since it is a consideration of a position of a semi-contract, that it would not necessarily be open to the Open Meetings Act, in which case I'm not positive about that, but I believe I was looking at it and I believe that it would be exempt from the Open Meetings Act. So that's what we're doing. I just wanted to make you guys aware of that so that you know that we're working in this regard. It's a really important document.
Just another point, Pete, it is an agreement that the board would enter into. So even though the negotiation meetings might not be subject to open meetings, this would come back before the board for ultimate approval before it would go into effect, correct?
Yes, sir. That's absolutely correct.
Peter,
And
just a quick note.
likely-
Oh, I'm sorry.
It would likely also come back to public comment as well.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there would have to be a public comment period and a hearing to ensure that we're getting input from the community.
Pete, just a quick comment. I saw Brandon Cohn put in the chat that the second Tuesday is March 12th, not the 13th. So I'm not sure if it's meant to be Wednesday the 13th or Tuesday the 12th. I did have
It is intended to be the Tuesday.
Okay.
So that's my fault on that.
I did have one quick question though. Are there any members of or employees of other hauling companies or disposal sites that are on that committee?
No.
Okay. I thought that was the case, but just wanted to confirm. It's obviously learning about host agreements or reviewing previous agreements. I think I don't have an issue with anyone, any competitors being involved in that, because I think they could, provide some good context. But obviously once it got into the negotiation of terms or what Metro's looking for, I didn't think that would be appropriate. So glad to hear.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it would be unethical to do so.
Any other questions or comments by board members? Okay, Pete. Old business.
Okay, last meeting, we brought up that we were working towards a letter and some enforcement for litter that comes from solid waste vehicles that traverse the roads. And we have been working, we've met several times, and we've enlisted for some information from the county attorney's office. So right now, the first phase of our plan is that we would draft the letter and send a letter to the disposal facilities asking them to post signage regarding the requirements to cover their load according to 51507. I believe that we're going to get widespread uh, acceptance of doing that, at least from what I've had from our discussion so far. The letter would be sent to waste haulers, reminding them of the ordinance, asking them to check all their load covering equipment and to remind their drivers of their responsibilities to make sure that the loads are covered. And, we want to do this out in advance. And we want to start hitting them with this education. And after a certain amount of time, then we would look to try to do enforcement. So part of the enforcement is a little bit up in the air. Number one is enlisting the help of LMPD, and there is wanting to make sure that we're going to be citing it in the right way, which currently ordinance in Louisville Metro is civil. It's not the criminal statute. I think it's 512. This falls under the local ordinance, and ensuring that LMPD is in a position to acknowledge that they need to cite it that way. The second is trying to ensure that they have the capacity to do so. And one of the things that we've had some discussions is that if it came down to being able to afford that or pay that, that maybe there was some potential that we could pay some overtime to get that done. The second part is inspections or enforcement by our solid waste enforcement officers. And this is where it gets a little bit gray. That is definitely the authority under the Waste Management District to be able to cite 51507. There is a penalty section. It's clear that the Waste District has this authority, or to delegate this authority to another agency that has the powers. The question really comes down to is how we do that. And code enforcement officers do not necessarily have the ability to stop and detain in order to inspect. And I believe that falls under the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution. So that is, one of the questions that we have. Whether or not that's along the roadway, I don't think that it's a good idea for code enforcement officers who are not equipped to be safe on a roadway to stop someone anyway. The second question is, can they do it at the entrance inside of the private property of the disposal facility? And it may come down to we might be able to do that if we were allowed, but we still wouldn't have the ability to stop and detain in order to inspect. So the third part is a more like a visual inspection at these facilities, possibly looking at the vehicles as they come in, taking images of vehicles that do not have their load properly covered, taking pictures of their license, the company, and issuing a civil citation under 507 under the authority of the Waste Management District without stopping the vehicle. And those citations can be appealed. They can be appealed to the Code Enforcement Board, another board similar to this, if they appeal there, they go and both sides are heard, and that board decides whether to uphold the citation, to conditionally discharge it, increase or decrease the fine amounts according to 51999, which is the penalty section under 51507. So that is the enforcement. Now, there has also been discussion as to whether or not we could do a annual inspection at licensing time for all of the different waste hauling vehicles under 51300. Currently, 51300 does not have an inspection clause in that. Hopefully, we'll take a look at it and see. Obviously, there's a lot of solid waste management vehicles out there that operate around the clock. It would be a fairly significant task, but it's under consideration to see if that is a possibility, what that looks like from an ordinance standpoint. But the good part about this is we're starting to make some progress in this regard. I feel like number one, the education part of this is a no-brainer. It's easy. The enforcement part, we're having the discussions. I feel like that we're going to be able to get something done. It's just a matter of how. So if anybody has any questions, let me just preface as to why we're doing this. The litter along the roadways is incredible. It tends to, where we notice it the most is on the Gene Schneider and on 65 for some reason. And we feel when you look at the contents of what is out there, it is typically lighter material, such as sheet plastic, bottles, cans, and those types of things, but usually in big clumps, like it's a bag that fell off a truck and split everywhere. So we've had some discussions as to why that's happening. Part of it is it's multiple. Number one, some loads are not covered. Those are the easy ones. Some loads are not covered enough to keep stuff from flying out of it. Their covers don't fit. They're torn. The diapers, what they call on the back of compactors, are not sealed up. A lot of this has to do with overpacking, overflowing dumpsters, overflowing garbage carts, that when they are put into the truck, some of the contents gets on top of the truck or around things. So there's a lot of different reasons why material escapes a solid waste truck. It's not a perfect industry. We will never stop all litter coming from solid waste trucks, but we can do a better job than what we're doing. And I think that's where we're heading right now. So if anybody has any questions about it, I sure would be happy to answer them and would enjoy the conversation.
Pete and I talked about this a little earlier, and I will not mention the company name, but it was really interesting that the very day that Pete sent out the agenda, and I saw this discussion, or there was going to be a discussion about this, I was driving down I-64 between Cannons Lane and Grinstead Drive, following a roll-off truck with a 40-yard box on the back of it from a local waste hauler servicing this area. And the cover was on the truck, but the box on the back of the truck was loaded way more than it should have been. And this truck was dropping lumber onto pieces of lumber. It looked like it must have maybe came from a demolition site or something like that, but it was dropping pieces of lumber on I-64. And in a couple of instances, cars were dodging stuff as it was hitting the roadway. So this, like Pete said, it goes just beyond the cover. It goes to, the overloading this stuff, and it does contribute a huge amount to litter on the roadways. And in this particular instance, it could have contributed to an accident. Any other questions, comments?
Pete, I noticed that the second bullet point, it says all disposal locations. Are you including transfer stations in that list as well? I think the only disposal locations are Outer Loop and Ralph Avenue.
No, it would include transfer stations. I include transfer stations in the statement of disposal locations. So yeah, I think it needs to take place countywide. Needs to be fair.
Are we going to at all focus on as far as the trailer, those type of vehicles?
Bruce, I could barely hear you. I could not make out what you said.
I'm sorry, can you hear me better now?
That's better. Yes.
Well, I'll make it quick. Is this going to focus on the small private haulers with a pickup truck and trailer as well?
It's a good question. I think if it's a small hauler that's definitely out there for hire, absolutely. If it is somebody with a private vehicle, it's a little bit more difficult to enforce. But I still think that you know, you have an educational component on it first, and then you have a citation part of it second. But yeah, I think that depending upon where it is, if it's coming into a disposal facility, that's one thing. If it's covering your load and it's on the roadway, it would have to include LMPD as far as a way to do that. And just to be sure, covering your load does not just pertain to solid waste. It can be the people that are moving stuff. It can be people that are taking stuff to recycling, not just to disposal facilities. And I would also include it would cover recycling facilities as well, is where we would be looking. So not just disposal.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks, Pete. Good luck. Anti-litter campaign update.
Oops. Karen, do you want to take this one?
I can. I think we obviously have already told you all about this campaign because we got the approval for funding. So this is an update on our progress. So we do have some potential partners. We're trying to get TARC. We've definitely talked to Brightside, possibly private waste collectors. We've kind of been back and forth on that, and then the litter contracts for the highways. So we've been meeting with Field Trip, who is our vendor for these digital campaigns, and we established that we will have a photo shoot and a video, kind of a short interview time with some specific people. Some of them we've identified, some we're still waiting, but the hope is that we get a broad look at people who help contribute to litter collection, garbage collection, things, just keeping things clean in Louisville. And we basically want their voices heard on the fact that we want residents to help, and we want residents to realize the work that's being done and how they can, how we can all work together to keep Louisville clean. So that's the overall theme. And I think it's going to be a really great campaign. We're hoping to, we're trying to get people that are somewhat well known in their community and to strategically place bus shelter posters or any other posters that people are willing to place in libraries, community centers, things like that. But as far as the paid media would be bus shelters and billboards, and we're hoping to keep those in areas where the people are known. And we can add, like in this example on this slide, it says Beachmont, but it could be any neighborhood name, depending on where it is, which is similar to what we did with the It Adds Up campaign. And it's kind of a continuation of that. It's similar fonts and colors. So it's kind of an evolution of campaigns here to hopefully get people on board with all of us working together to keep things clean and hopefully change some perspectives. The one thing I had emailed out, and I'm not sure, I didn't receive any emails back from any board members, but if you have not had a chance to look at the draft survey for basically public perception about litter, I was hoping to finalize that, and I thought maybe you all could help me out with that. So I don't know if anybody has any comments, and I do see Deputy Mayor George has her digital hand up.
Thank you, Karen. And let me just say, I love everything about this. So I can't wait to see these in the community. My question is around alignment with some of the other anti-litter campaigns. I think about on the way into the office, I saw the Stash Your Trash campaign there that Brightside has at the TARC stop on 5th Street. And so I'm just wondering what efforts are being made to ensure that we're aligning messaging and that we are maximizing efforts in terms of visibility.
Well, we haven't had, we're meeting with Elizabeth from Brightside on Friday to discuss various things, especially for the kind of looking at champions, litter champions, and recognizing people, but and Rob Lush is involved in that part as well. So, I mean, I know, I'm not sure what the trash campaign, I believe that's the last one they've done, and I'm really not sure if it is still continuing or if it's just up, as in no one else has, you know, requested the particular billboard. Pete, do you have any other thoughts on that?
I don't, other than you know, the bright side, Lori has indicated that she's very excited about this. I do believe that last year we ran 2 campaigns at the same time, which is, I think, what Deputy Mayor George is getting at. If I think that's something that we got to get a little bit more coordinated. We're a ways out from doing ours. So that coordination does need to take place. If you could have seen the Stash Your Trash from last year, if somebody doesn't buy the space, it stays up forever, which is great for anybody. But we'll make sure that we're going to coordinate our efforts better this year.
We do have a potential timeline, and I will for sure share that with Brightside.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, just making sure that they're not running a campaign in the same neighborhood where, you know,
Yeah,
this display would be helpful. But this is exciting. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Pete. Karen, advisory committee report.
Well, I could, Bruce, are you still there?
I am, but if you have trouble hearing me, Pete, feel free to take over.
No, you got it. I mean, your voice is coming in strong. So fire away.
All right, well, I'm very proud and thankful to the members of the advisory committee as well as staff with their assistance in putting together the cost of services RFP. I thought that was a job well done, as well as the subcommittee group that worked on the education outreach efforts that Karen helped out a great deal with. I think we've made significant progress there, and I can let Pete and Karen get into any more specifics that you may want to address with the board.
Yeah, I'll talk about the contracts committee. I will say that the contracts committee has been folded back to the full advisory committee. So we're not necessarily meeting at this point. We have really accomplished most of the goals that we set out to do, which was the scope of services or the cost of services. We have already came to you guys with the capture rate study RFP that has went out and hopefully soon will be awarded. We have talked quite a bit about construction and demolition debris and the limitations of trying to start up something in that regards under the current climate. Not that we've given that up. It's just that it's kind of gotten slid back a little bit. So right now that committee got folded up to the full committee, which really did make sense. And really appreciate all the work that everybody put into those. And, you know, we continue to work on improving things. So Karen, do you have anything on the education committee that you want to share?
Yeah, I can share that we had been very focused on the idea of consistent messaging throughout the county, and still that's kind of our driving force, and we still believe that it is, you know, one of the most important things. I'm finalizing some one kind of discrepancy with the MRFs, but other than that, we're very close, and we would like to we've talked a lot about methods of communication and education, and it boils down to there's no one good way. You really have to do a lot of different methods. So we would like to be able to educate at the cart through the entire, through the waste hauler, all waste haulers. We found that through our Recycle Right program, that education directly at the cart is effective. And so we intend to have a meeting with a representative from the private haulers to kind of work together and determine a good way to disseminate some information. And there are two different groups there that would be new customers, new recyclers, and then existing recyclers. So although we do have some ideas, it's definitely going to be a collaboration, and we're going to need some input from the private industry to understand what's feasible and what we all agree can be effective. But that's, you know, still in the works. And throughout all of this, I do intend to create and have available, whether through website and then pushing that link out, whatever, some good information and basically resources for anyone to use in newsletters. You know, if it's an HOA president, somebody who has a newsletter to fill some content, some choices there. So that's kind of the idea. And so we've had a lot of discussions through that education subcommittee, which same with contracts. We're kind of going back to the monthly full advisory committee, but it doesn't mean we aren't going to be talking about education. But I am, I'll continue the work that we've started. And if there's anyone that has any other suggestions or ideas, I'm all ears.
Yeah, if I would, I'd just like to add that the part about consistent messaging is really big. And we've learned this through the years by going to Rumpke Recycling Facility, West Rock Recycling Facility, and hearing this drumbeat from the recycling partnership that being consistent is important. And we need to get consistent across all of the different ways that we communicate and all the different haulers that we utilize. But it's not just curbside that we're looking at. We need consistent messaging in multifamily recycling. We need it for business recycling. So if somebody moves from this part of town to another part of town, it's the same message on what is recyclable. Reducing that confusion is a big step towards increasing recycling. So it's one part of this. So it's the existing recyclers, right? But on the other side of things, we have to start working more on new recyclers, the people that don't believe that the material gets to the recycling facility. We just throw it all away. That's another avenue of people that we have to start reaching. You reach them totally different. So we have a long way to go in education because it is such a wide open thing. And it just doesn't include the curbside, which is what people think. It even includes construction and demolition and how you do that. So we've got a long way to go to get to where we need to be. But this is a great step, and all the work that's been done has been excellent.
Pete, if I may, I would be remiss if I did not publicly thank Sandra Leonard as well as Adam Story for their leadership with the subcommittees in achieving our goals. So thank you.
Agreed. They've done a great job.
Okay, Bruce, Karen, Pete, thank you all on that. Any questions from board members?
I just have a comment. This is Deidre. I know a couple of years ago, we talked about, as far as education, we talked about blowing grass and leaves in the street. And I know we're going to do, this is one of my pet peeves, I'm sorry. It's a danger to bikers, it's a danger to people, especially when it's wet. I have slid on leaves that are blown in the middle of the street. So if we're going to do a campaign, an educational campaign, can we put something in there to let these mowers and all of them know that blowing grass in the middle of the street can be dangerous and harmful to people?
Isn't this specific to that litter abatement grant that we got? The current campaign we're working on?
That's a little bit dicey because they don't consider organic material to be litter under the KRS and that grant. What I will say is it is part of our street sweeping education program that's coming out. We always tell people not to blow their materials out into the street. I think, Deetra, what you're probably talking about is the weekly people that throw that out there. Typically, the complaint is about the leaves in the fall and what we get. The enforcement of that is fairly difficult. Usually by the time that anybody gets there, they're blown off of the roadway by the vehicles that pass. And the ability of it to make the enforcement of this work is a little bit gray, which is not, you don't want gray when you're trying to enforce something. But I do remember our conversation about that, Deetra, and it's something that we have to build this out. It's kind of been, we've had so much to do, but it does creep its way in with particularly with the street sweeping information that we put out. But point taken, and I believe that we can certainly make a post about that now. Whether or not that we can have another letter that goes out similar to the already that we're sending out to the record services and the private haulers. If we can find out how many people are doing lawn service, we can remind them as well through another letter. But boy, there's a whole lot of people out there doing that. A lot of people
Right.
aren't necessarily doing it right.
I know we're coming into mowing season, and I know you go down the roadways and you see a lot of people blowing grass into the streets, blowing leaves into the streets, and it's just, I mean, because a lot of times you're not able to get out and sweep the streets constantly. And so if we could have people just let them know that you could get the grass up and not blow it into the middle of the street.
Agreed.
Along the line of what Deetra's saying, is there an association of lawn service people in Louisville? Because what I agree with Deetra, what I've personally noticed is a whole lot of these lawn services, even some of the bigger ones, when they've cut the grass and there's grass all over the sidewalk and stuff, and they're clearing the sidewalk, they clear it by blowing it out into the street. So
I used to do it myself. That's the last thing that I would want to do, and I think that you blow the stuff into the thing so that you can chop it up and into the lawn, so it's composted into the lawn instead of putting it on somebody else. So,
well,
I agree.
And I'm talking about, they're out there with their blowers.
Yeah.
The lawn has been mowed and they're out there with their blowers blowing the excess stuff out into the street. So if there was some kind of an association, that would be another place to send a letter and say, please remind all your members that this is not legal to do that.
We'll see if there's an association. It'd be good to work with an association on it. But
I just looked up online. There is a National Association of Landscape Professionals.
Maybe that's an avenue.
It's
we
an
can do a
avenue.
little bit of research on them.
Yeah.
Diane, if you want to get a little bit deeper into that, that'd be great.
Okay.
See if there's any local chapters.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Staff report. None.
We didn't have a staff report today.
Okay, announcements. We have two. The 109 board meeting for March will be on the 27th. And there's an advisory committee meeting scheduled for Wednesday, March the 20th. Are there any other questions or comments from board members or from the audience attending? Okay, hearing none, I guess we will adjourn. Thanks very much for everybody that participated on the board and for everybody that attended the meeting and contributed to the meeting. Thank you all very much. Have a good week, and I guess we'll see you in March. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Oh, I guess we are officially adjourned at 6:49 p.m.
Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Right.
Bye-bye.